Hello, this is Gene Irwin, the founder of the 3D Business Launch Model, introducing to you to 3D Business Launch Model's podcast, the first one in a series of 1001 entitled, What Business Is It of Yours? We hope you enjoy it. Hello, this is Gene Irwin. In the 3D Business Launch Model podcast series 1001, What Business Is It of Yours? What business is it of yours? That's a famous line that we all used when we were kids. Now sometimes we use that in our personal lives, in our families, and at work. In this podcast series entitled What Business Is It of Yours? I'm going to stick my nose into your business, well, sort of, in developing your own home-based business. In other words, I'm going to help you find a business or type of businesses that you can stick with. When I was a boy, I thought the most important thing for me to do as I got older is to be self-employed. Why did I feel that way? I felt that way because that's all I knew. I grew up on a working ranch in western Montana with 4 older brothers and no sisters. We all had jobs on the ranch, in the woods working for Father. For nearly 40 years, he was a logging contractor. I didn't really know what that meant when I was a kid, but I learned later that meant he was responsible for another 20 to 25 families and their jobs. Even then, I didn't really understand the ramifications of what it meant to be somebody's employer. What you may not know is that a logging contractor is someone who hires people to build and clear roads, to drive large trucks, to harvest massive trees, to manage fuel deliveries, and all of the other multitude of items that go into running the business. Several of my older brothers worked with my father in the woods. They were what is known as sawyers, or people who did very dangerous work by clearing out dead trees and brush, and then harvesting trees that we all used to build our homes and schools and other buildings. Where I grew up, there were about 4 to 5 logging companies in the same small area in town that I lived in western Montana. On the west coast of Oregon and Washington, there are hundreds of such small logging contractors like my family. They, too, were dependent on natural resources in the Northwest. The political ramifications were changes in state and federal regulations and the general market worldwide for wood-based products. Over the years, the pressure of politics and international supply and demand reduced the availability of jobs of this nature to primarily only those large companies in Canada and other large cities, and through the use of the Bureau of Land Management or the U.S. Forest Service, a federal agency of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. As I said, some of you know I grew up on a working ranch that had lots of cows and horses, about 230 plus of the first, and exactly 54 of the second. I know. I was a boy who fed these animals throughout the year, especially in winter, burr in Montana, and I counted them to make sure all were present for dinner. These types of animals demanded clean water and regular supplies of fresh grass, growing wheat, and hay in the winter. As I got older, my job was to irrigate hundreds and hundreds of acres to make sure that the animals had all the food they needed to get through the harsh winters of Montana. As time drew near to my high school climax when I was a junior, I asked my dad why was he buying more land and more animals, especially fan favorites, Appaloosas, and quarter horses. I expressly remember asking, Dad, all the other boys have left home for college or out-of-state jobs. Who are you going to get to run a ranch? His response was direct and simple. You're still home, aren't you? It wasn't my choice of a career path. I knew from the dwindling jobs in the logging industry that I had to figure out something else to do for my career. I knew I was going to go to college, but I didn't know what I was going to do for a major. I had absolutely no idea. I knew I liked to draw, so I thought, well, I would end up being an architect or someone like that. As the time came for me to enroll in various classes at Montana State University, I was scared to see thousands of people in that field house, much more than had lived in the small town I grew up in. I had never seen so many people in my life. For approximately 200 feet across the middle of the stadium, there were 2 or 3 counselors per table spread out with posters from A to Z, and large letters taped to the front of these tables as we all rearranged our positions to find the right line to be in. After the 40 or 50 of people in front of me got done talking to these counselors, it was finally my turn. This is a true story. My response to the question, "What would you like to do, young man?" was, "Well, I'd like to be an architect." The counselor then named a list of 4 or 5 classes that I had to sign up for my freshman year in college, including science, English, and something called calculus. Upon hearing the names of the courses that I was required to take as a freshman, I said, "Calculus? Why do I have to take calculus?" The counselor said, "Well, you have to know if the building you're drawing is going to fall down." My immediate response was, "I don't care if it falls down. I just want to draw it." Unfortunately, the counselor insisted I must take that course. I said, "Well, if I have to take calculus, I might as well be an engineer." "What kind of engineer builds buildings?" The counselor informed me that they would usually be a mechanical or civil engineer. So, after signing up for some of the courses, I set out to go to the engineering school and find out what the rest of the courses are that I have to take. Fortunately, for engineers who usually can't spell very well, all of the names of the different engineering schools were listed alphabetically on a little placard above the door of each of the engineering dean's office. In my case, I kept on walking down the hall and I noticed aeronautical engineering, then biological engineering, and then chemical engineering. I could see down the hall a little bit further and I noticed that civil engineering was coming up. But since I did pretty good in my chemistry class in high school, I turned left into the chemical engineering group, stayed there for 4 years, and graduated with a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering. Ironically, my first career job as an engineer was building pipelines as a civil engineer. It's been many years since that time in many different companies and different types of jobs that have made me the person I am today, at least from an employment point of view. I'm sure some of you have gone through the same type of metamorphosis, perhaps with even more unusual transformations than my own. Hopefully, from all of your life's experiences, whether it's short or long, you have an idea of what it is you want to do. But as we just heard from my childhood, the careers that we think we're going to do may not exist by the time you get old enough or available because of time or circumstances to do them. In one of my videos, I talk about why people start a business. There are just as many reasons for starting a business as there are for businesses to start. After many years of helping companies build and install large facilities that would benefit ranchers, farmers, and the average person, I began to realize that just being an engineer only wouldn't have the major impact on the success of the company that I was looking for. I worked for a company called Combustion Engineering, and I was very good at it, and designed some technical equipment for offshore companies and companies in the Midwest in the food industry. What I did was very technical and dealt with something called thermodynamics, which is basically the science of heat transfer. In spite of creating dozens of designs to satisfy the needs of the marketing department, to explain to clients around the world how our products work, very few of my designs were actually purchased. I had little to no input in the sales process. I also noticed that successful people in the marketing business with fewer years in the company than I had earned 2 to 3 times what my engineering salary was. That really got my attention. Due to my design, drawing, and engineering background, I was chosen to work for a company with something called Computer-Aided Design and Computer-Aided Drafting, or CADD, or CAD for short. It was basically taking the draftsman's skills and efforts in making drawings, which were quite complicated, and converting that to lines on a computer screen, and later these would eventually be printed out on the large drawings necessary for construction. I asked the hiring manager the following pivotal question that changed my career forever, and that was, will I be able to impact the sales, installation, and use of this product? The decision to ask that one important question has created nearly $300 million in sales and contracts over my career. Someone said that the doors of your personal history open or close on very small hinges, depending on what we say, decisions we make, things we do, or questions we ask. Think of the various statements that you made over your life and the questions that you have asked. Which of those questions have made the most impact on your past and your future? It is the answer to those questions that dictate the direction of our future. Now, I don't mean to sound as an alarmist or someone who's trying to predict the future. I just know from experience that decisions we make are emotional initially, then we support them by logic. It made sense for me to go from being an architect to becoming an engineer. It also made sense for me to change from engineering into marketing support. It made sense for me to learn corporate accounting so that I could understand the financial needs of the company and the people it employs. It made sense to learn how to become a venture capitalist. It made sense for me to do multi-million-dollar deals. It also made sense for me to evaluate thousands of companies, large and small, to structure them to be in a position to be purchased by investors or acquired by another company to satisfy their expansion needs. And it also made sense for me to write a book to determine and explain the fair market value of all business types. And now, my friend, it makes sense to take my decades of experience and millions of dollars in sales, marketing and engineering, accounting and investment experience to help you learn which company, industry, product or service is going to be your own home-based business. What business is it of yours? This is Gene Irwin, the founder of the 3D Business Launch Model, with its first podcast entitled, What Business Is It of Yours? This podcast for this part of the series will now focus on something called What Type of Business Has Your Interest? Our podcast is designed to cover a lot of topics very quickly. We will publish a list of topics that we want to provide to you, and then over time we'll take surveys to make sure that we are addressing those areas of most importance to our new business owners' community. Shown below is our first installment of What Type of Business Has Your Interest? We're going to talk about the top 20 self-employed businesses. We're going to talk about the top 20 home-based businesses, the top 20 franchises under $50,000, and the top 10 types of acquisitions for under $100,000. Finally, our podcast will be consistent in our logo design shown here to the right, so that you'll be able to keep all of these important content lessons in a separate catalog file of your choosing. We've concluded this first podcast by saying that I've thrown a lot at you in this introduction, which talks about the challenges of being self-employed. That includes trying to determine what type of business would be of most interest to you. Send us an email or give us a call so you'll have free access to several videos which solve most of these problems for you and may help you determine which course of action may be most beneficial to you and your family in your own home-based business. Our goal is to help you with the creation of successful and profitable business. Again, this is Gene Irwin, founder of the 3D Business Launch Model. You can reach me at ghigfac@aol.com or call us direct at 1-800-750-8767. Thank you for listening.